Hello and welcome to the Decade of Centenaries Sligo online lecture series. These talks are illuminating events, people and places from a century ago. My name is Michelle Cashman and I am the librarian in the Local Studies section of Sligo Central Library. The materials accompanying these talks are from the Local Studies Library and also from the contributors' collections. We have 6 speakers covering a variety of topics. Dr. Michael Farry's lecture is on the Chaffpool ambush, which took place on the 30th of September 1920. Dr. Padraig Duigan's lecture is on Linda Kearns, her life and times. Local historian and author Joe McGowan will lecture on the Monegold ambush, which took place in October 1920. I will deliver a talk on behalf of Dr. Reverend Peter C. Humphreys on the history of the Sligo Congregational Church 1780 to 1939. This talk will coincide with the forthcoming publication of a pamphlet by Dr. Humphreys on the Sligo Congregational Church. Simone Hickey will give a lecture on the Sligo connection to World War I and of some of those soldiers from Sligo who died in the conflict. Tommy Higgins will give a talk on Lest Sligo Forgets, the campaign to commemorate those from Sligo who died in World War I. On behalf of Donald Tinney and Sligo Libraries, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our contributors who took part in the online lecture series under rather challenging circumstances.
Early on the morning of Thursday, the 30th of September 1920, Frank Carty, Vice OC of Sligo Brigade IRA, with a group of about 12 local IRA, occupied an ambush position at Chaffpool, about 3 miles from Tubbercurry, on the road to Bunanadden and Ballymote. The positions were behind stone walls overlooking a rise in the road 50 yards away, with a clear field of fire. Later, an official British report described the ambush situation from their point of view as a death trap. Since his rescue from Sligo jail on the 26th of June, Carty had intensified IRA activity in the area. His party was well armed, having recently increased their weaponry by disarming policemen and by purchasing 6 Lee Enfield rifles from IRA headquarters. Carty claims in an account of his activities that this ambush was a deliberate attempt to get Tubbercurry District Inspector James Joseph Brady, but other accounts don't corroborate this. D.I. Brady, aged 21, had been appointed to Tubbercurry earlier that month. The group lay in ambush all day, and that evening one Crossley tender with a party of RIC, including D.I. Brady and 8 other policemen, approached on its way back from Sligo to Tubbercurry via Ballymote. As the tender entered the ambush position, fire was opened at the driver in order to halt the vehicle. Brady, who was sitting in front, was hit at least 5 times. Head Constable O'Hara was seriously wounded, and Constable Brown slightly wounded. Fire was returned by the police, but none of the attackers were hit. The tender continued at speed to Tubbercurry Police Barracks, where the injured were treated by the local doctor, Dr. Flannery. D.I. Brady died of his wounds in the barracks about 3 hours later. At this time, reprisals by the Crown forces in response to IRA actions were common, so the people of Tubbercurry were frightened on hearing of the ambush and the death. Some left the town to stay with friends or relations in the country. Business people secured important files and ledgers. When news reached Sligo of the ambush, RIC District Inspector Russell took 4 lorries containing 16 police and 10 soldiers, according to the official report, to Tubbercurry, arriving around 11 p.m. Soon afterwards, police and soldiers rushed out of the barracks, firing weapons, and proceeded to break into houses and business premises, targeting those believed to be owned or staffed by Republican sympathisers. Over the next few hours, the town was terrorised. 16 or 17 premises were looted and or burned. Howley's beside the barracks was the first attacked, and the extensive premises of E.J. Cook were completely destroyed by fire. Some people tried to save burning buildings. When Durkins was set on fire, a daughter, Sissy, helped quench the flames with buckets of water. Armstrong's was set ablaze, but similarly saved from destruction by the action of a daughter, Bridget Armstrong. There were reports in the press that D.I. Russell and a military officer tried their best to restrain the Crown forces, and that but for their efforts, things would have been much worse. Tubbercurry Creamery at Rathscanlon was completely destroyed, and the manager's house fired on. A Conry Creamery on the Tubbercurry Sligo Road was attacked by Crown forces on their way back to Sligo. Locals managed to bring the fire under control and saved a bacon factory and part of the premises. In a letter written on the 5th of October, Mrs. Bridget Gilmartin of Tubbercurry told her daughter in New York, "Oh, Nora, the soldiers that night were like so many divils let loose from hell." As they broke the fine plate glass windows, fanlights and doors, they were calling out the Sinn Féiners and saying, "Where are they, the bloody swine?" Some of them took a melodeon from Malarkey's window and were playing the air of the minstrel boy and laughing and jeering at the destruction of the town. Press reports from Tubbercurry say that on Saturday, not a soul was to be seen at the square. 2/3 of the population had fled to the countryside. Ruined shops were still smouldering. The paths were strewn with broken glass, whisky and brandy bottles, and numerous bullet marks were visible on the walls. Shops and houses which had not been attacked were barricaded. An official statement from Dublin Castle admitted that there had been reprisals and said, "When the men saw D.I. Brady lying dead on the floor, and the sergeant with the calf of his leg blown away moaning, and a constable with pellets lodged in his face, they broke out of hand and rushed out into the street, calling on the Sinn Féiners to come out and fight them like men." Reprisals continued until early in the morning, despite the efforts of the officers. The senior officer said that he had never seen men so angry. At Mass in Chaffpool and Tubbercurry on the 10th of October, the parish priest Canon Gunning read extracts from a letter from D.I. Brady's father, Louis, in which he said, "We forgive from our hearts whoever was responsible for this deed, wherever they came from. My wife and I were deeply grieved to learn of the reprisals which have taken place in your parish. There are reports that the IRA, expecting reprisals, had plans to defend Tubbercurry, and the names of over 90 IRA men from local companies are included in the military services pension collection, as having been on duty in different areas to defend Tubbercurry that night. Carty says that he, with a small group near the square, opened fire on the Crown forces, but when fire was returned, he ordered a retreat, fearing that they would be surrounded and captured. There is no mention anywhere else in press or police reports of IRA firing during the arrival of the contingent from Sligo or during the reprisals, and it seems that any attempts by Carty and his men to protect Tubbercurry were completely ineffective. Admitting this, Jack Brennan, who had been a member of the IRA, told Ernie O'Malley, "This wasn't good for our reputation." Who were the Crown forces involved in the Tubbercurry reprisals? The Freeman's Journal reported that the precise composition of the forces sacking the town is not known, but added, all through the night, the English accent was plainly heard urging on destruction. In August 1920, C Company, 1st Battalion, just over 100 men, of the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment was stationed in Sligo Military Barracks. The Diary of Activities of the Regiment for 30th of September says, immediately after news of this ambush had been received in Sligo, a party of C Company hurried to Tubbercurry and carried out an extensive search in conjunction with members of the auxiliary police stationed in that town. This diary makes no mention of any reprisals, exchange of gunfire, burnings, or destructions. The auxiliary police mentioned are what we often refer to as black and tans, members recruited in England as well as Ireland from January 1920 to augment the RIC, in difficulty because of resignations and lack of recruits. These served alongside regular RIC men in the same barracks. The auxiliaries as such were a separate category of police under separate control, housed apart from the regular police. No auxiliaries were stationed in Sligo or Tubbercurry at this time. Auxiliaries were only stationed in Tubbercurry from April 1921, when they took over Howley's business premises, which, as I mentioned, had been damaged during the reprisals. So those responsible for the Tubbercurry reprisals appear to have been soldiers of the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment and policemen, black and tans, from Sligo and from Tubbercurry. Frank Carty remained at large and active until he was captured by Crown forces on the 25th of November 1920. South Sligo IRA remained active in the area, and most were able to avoid capture and continue to engage in small-scale offensive actions until the truce.